Well, it is week 2 of the Louisiana high school playoffs, Ken, and we're down to now 64 games this week. When we get past Friday night, we'll have 64 winners, and as our friend, the late Rick Gailey, used to say, if you're practicing on Thanksgiving Day, it's been a good season. The winners on Friday night will be practicing on Thanksgiving Day and getting ready for a game the Friday after Thanksgiving.
This gets better. Week 1 is never real good. You had 55 games decided by 20 points or more in week 1, but that's not unusual. And you only have one top 10 seed that got knocked out in round 1, Northwood, in Division I non-select. So now we start to see more competitive games, and we'll see some lower seeds win this week.
Absolutely. So let's start on the non-select side in Division I. In the non-select side, the top 4 teams all had byes last week. What do you see, first of all, is maybe the most attractive matchup in this part of the bracket? And is there somebody, you talked about those upsets, where do you maybe see an upset coming from?
Well, I think there's a bunch of attractive matchups, and some of them are intersectional. Like Baton Rouge School against Baton Rouge School. East Ascension at Central. East Ascension's a very physical football team. Central has done a great job this year after a state championship last year, losing the preponderance of their players. Spartans are physical. This is going to be a very close football game. And you look at their common opponents, and they both lost to Denham Springs by 6, so it gives you some perspective. Speaking of Denham Springs, they host Zachary. Well, you know what Zachary's been over the years, and Zachary's the 13 seed. They're used to being there. The Yellow Jackets aren't. Yellow Jackets are probably a little better, but Zachary's used to being there, so that could be a potential upset. Washita Parish, I should say, at Destrehan. And the Lions barely survived last week. They got to travel all the way to Destrehan. I like Destrehan to win the game, but this is a tough second-round game for Destrehan. Washita Parish coming out of that brutal 2-5A district. Hahnville at Parkway. I'm not sure who's going to stop the other team in that game. It's going to be a bunch of points. Hahnville can score with Parkway. It's a long trip, but they're going to have to score, and they do have a chance in that game, in my opinion.
Well, we remember Destrehan going to Captain Shreve in the regular season and keeping the odometer moving the whole night long. You go to Division II non-select, and again, 1 through 4 sat out last week. Now they come into the bracket this week. Your thoughts there?
Well, I think that it's probably a weaker bracket as compared to others, and that seems to be the case annually, and that's not a criticism. It's just a statement of fact in terms of power points and what kind of teams you have. There are good teams, though, and the good matchups. The 9-8 matchup is a very good matchup. Jennings at Franklinton. Jennings can really score. They've lost to nothing but very good teams. Franklinton's been good but not great this year, but Jacob Crane is a difference maker. They're at home. That's a good one. Cecilia is the defending state champion. They're the 13, and they're at Lakeshore. And they're scoring over 40 a game. Lakeshore is so well coached and so disciplined under Brent Indest. But this is a tough matchup for Lakeshore in the second round at home against the defending state champion. So watch out for the Bulldogs there.
Yeah, Lakeshore and Belle Chase both coming into the bracket now this week. We move on to Division III non-select. Local interest, of course, St. James. They come in after the bye. Your thoughts here?
St. James will win against Manny. Sterlington will win. As I said before, I think those two will meet in the semifinals on one side. Then, of course, when you look at really good games this week, look, Union Parish doesn't have a great record, but we know what they are. And they've been in the Dome. They're a winner. They play a tough schedule. They're the 12 seed. They're at Erath, and Erath's a very good team. But the Farmers have played a very tough schedule, so watch out there for an upset. The 20 seed Kaplan is at the 4 Kinder. Kinder's really good. Kaplan last week, they went to Pine, a team I really respect, and beat them by 15 points. So that was kind of an eye-opener. This is the K game, Kaplan against Kinder. So, hey, should be fun. I'm Kenny. I like it.
There you go. All right, we get to Division IV non-select, and what is it that jumps out on the page to you there?
Well, you got the oldest rivalry in Louisiana renewed, Homer and Haynesville. Of course, it was a one-sided game. Haynesville won 54-6 in the regular season, and the Tornadoes will win again. They're the prohibitive favorite in this particular class. But just having that rivalry renewed again is pretty special. The one that sticks out to me is Faraday, the 10 at the 7, East Feliciana. East Feliciana is really good, but Faraday is playing great, and they've outscored their last two opponents 104-6. So I think Faraday's got a real shot in this game.
Be one to watch there. Of course, South Plaquemines locally getting underway after their first round bye. All right, let's switch sides to the select side, and it's a little bit different there. It's a 24-team bracket, so everybody who's at home this week, 1 through 8, all sat out last week, while the visitors were all in action last week. So we start with Division I, and we're going to immediately tell you, of course, that you're calling the Rummel-Tioga game Friday night, so we'll leave that out of the conversation. I'm calling the St. Augustine-Acadiana game. Leaving that out of the conversation here as we start to analyze a little bit in terms of what we think might happen in some of these games. So we start there with Division I.
Well, I'll put those in the conversation. They're both really good games. Acadiana's a traditional power. They've won 8 in a row. St. Augustine might be the second best team in the class. Got one injury of note, but they're really good, and Robert Valdez has done a great job. So that's a really good matchup to get in the second round. You would expect that one later in the playoffs. Rummel, 7-4. That's a good 7-4 football team. All you need to do is look at strength of schedule and who they've played. Really good running game. Tioga's got a terrific offense, an LSU commit, and wide receiver. They score a bundle of points. So those are two really good matchups. Meanwhile, you've got St. Paul's, the 9, traveling all the way to Shreveport at Durant Field to play Vangilder Christian. Boy, you talk about a great game and a contrast. This is one I'd like to do. St. Paul's has the great running game. Evangel has the great passing game. Something's got to give. Who imposes whose will there? I think the Wolves have a real shot in that game. And then, of course, St. Thomas More, traditional power, traveling to the Shrine in Metairie to play John Curtis Christian. St. Thomas More, great program for so many years, state championship program. John Curtis, we know, the most championships in Louisiana sports history. And, of course, you got the 2 winningest coaches in the history of Louisiana high school football there, and John Curtis and, of course, in St. Thomas More. So doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, about close to 1,100 wins between those guys. That's pretty extraordinary. Okay, Division II select, and again, there's obviously a lot more as we get to the select side. A lot more local teams factoring into play here. Of course, there you're talking about St. Charles Catholic, the number 1 seed, and just your thoughts on the rest of the bracket.
Well, it's a really tough bracket. I mean, it's top heavy. There's so many really good teams in the top 8 seeds, and that's why I really don't see upsets in this particular class. I think St. Michael's a good team. They could contest EDY, but EDY is so tough when it comes to the playoffs, and they're hard to play against, and I can't pick against the Cardinals, but that might be the matchup that's worth watching. But like I said, I just think it's a top-heavy bracket, and I really like the teams that are near the top. They're all really good teams.
So this is, if one bracket comes through 1 through 8 with the chalk holding, this may be the one you think it is.
I think that would be accurate, yes.
Okay, let's move on to Division III select, and you got a lot of attractive matchups here as well. And again, those top 8 seeds coming into play for the first time. Your thoughts?
Well, you got Catholic New Iberia as the defending champion, and they're in the 9. They're a road team at Bunkie. Now, Bunkie's had 2 straight outstanding seasons. A regional game, 2 teams that are not too far apart. But, hey, you got the defending champion, and they're really good, and they're really well coached. Coach Desormo does a great job, so Catholic New Iberia, a live lower seed there, although it's a 9-8, I think they've got a great chance to win. Amite's a 10 seed. They go to an emerging power in Lafayette Renaissance. Are they there yet? Lafayette Renaissance, I don't know, but we know Amite is, so there's a real shot for the Warriors there. And don't sleep on the 18 De La Salle. They're going to number 2 Notre Dame. I've said it before. Look at their pre-district schedule. It was overloaded with powerful teams, and look, I've done a couple of their games. They're big and strong. They've got really good running backs. This will be a good football game.
Well, as Graham Jarrett said on your show on Saturday, this is why you play those difficult pre-district games, is to get ready for a matchup like this. So we close it out with Division IV select. And I think maybe if anything's got a chance to, blow up the bracket with double-digit seeds, this may be the spot.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true, and I think there's some really good matchups here. The number 9, St. Edmund, boy, they can score. And they're at the number 8, Covenant Christian. They scored over 60 last week, but Covenant can score too, and they got to go to the Bayou. But that's a game that could go either way. Blue Jays are very good offensively. St. Frederick, the 14. This is a good team at 14, and they're at Hamilton Christian. I'd watch that one pretty closely too. Kentwood is in 11. We know what they've been over the years. They're at the 6 Ascension Episcopal. Really good matchup. Kangaroos, battle-tested. Think they have a real shot there. And, of course, a game that you would think you might see in the Dome, or see in the semifinals at the very least, the number 10 Southern Lab at the number 7 Ouachita Christian. You might give a slight edge to the Eagles because they're at home. I picked them to win it all before it started. But, boy, what a tough second-round matchup they have, having Southern Lab there. Those are just 4, but I think there's a lot in that particular bracket.
Yeah, it's a terrific bracket, and arguably that is the best game of all of the 64 this week potentially is that Southern Lab OCS game going on in Monroe. Of course, there's no better place to keep up with all of the action than right here at Crescent City Sports with our scoreboard presented by the All-State Sugar Bowl. Of course, Ken has the original on Friday nights on 106.7 The Ticket and his statewide network with the Archbishop Rummel Tioga game embedded inside his show this week. So check it all out, as there is no better place to be to keep up with all of your coverage of high school football on the road to the Dome.